zombies, walkers, the living dead, the undead. The notion of zombies have been around the American consciousness for quite some time. But where does this fascination come from, and why, over the past decade, 15 years, has the phenomenon seemed to grow and grow? And here's the way you kind of know that it's grown and grown. One, werewolves aren't in the popular conscience like that. Vampires flashed in the pan and are gone. Witches, always kind of a thing for middle school girls, but never really anything outside of that. None of the other big bads of the traditional horror story rogues gallery have entered the zeitgeist in quite the same way as zombies, spawning an entire brand of literature, if you expand sort of the definition of literature, but also popular terms like zombie apocalypse. Everyone has some type of plan these days for what they would do in the case of a zombie apocalypse. The term zombie comes to us from voodoo. Wikipedia tells us, quote, "The English word zombie was first recorded in 1819 in a history of Brazil by the poet Robert Southey in the form of zombie, spelled Z-O-M-B-I. The Oxford English Dictionary gives the word's origin as Central African and compares it to the Congo words Nzambi, God, or Zumbi, or Nzumbi, fetish. Some authors also compare it to the Congo word Vumbi, Mvumbi, ghost, revenant, corpse that still retains the soul. Mvumbi, body without a soul. A Kimbundu to Portuguese dictionary from 1903 defines the related word Nzumbi as soul, while a later Kimbundu Portuguese dictionary defines it as being a spirit that is supposed to wander the earth to torment the living. One of the first books to expose Western culture to the concept of the voodoo zombie was W.B. Seabrook's The Magic Island, 1929, the account of a narrator who encounters voodoo cults in Haiti and their resurrected thralls." End quote. But perhaps as much to blame for the American idea of the zombie as the 1929 novel is the 1932 film titled White Zombie. According to Wikipedia, the movie's plot was this, quote, "On arrival in Haiti, Madeline Short reunites with her fiancé Neil Parker with imminent plans to be married. On the way to their lodging, the couple's coach passes Murder Legendra, an evil voodoo master, who observes them with interest. Neil and Madeline arrive at the home of a wealthy plantation owner, Charles Beaumont. Charles' love of Madeline prompts him to meet Murder secretly in Murder's sugarcane mill, operated entirely by zombies. Charles wants to convince Madeline to marry him and solicits Murder's supernatural assistance. Murder states that the only way to help Charles is to transform Madeline into a zombie with a potion. Beaumont agrees, takes the potion, and surreptitiously gives it to Madeline. Shortly after Madeline and Neil's wedding ceremony, the potion takes effect on Madeline, who soon dies and is buried. Murder and Charles enter Madeline's tomb at night and bring her back to life as a zombie. In a drunken state, a depressed Neil sees ghostly apparitions of Madeline and goes to her tomb. On finding it empty, Neil seeks out the assistance of local missionary Dr. Bruner, who recounts how Murder turned many of his rivals into zombies, who now act as Murder's closest guardians. The two men journey to Murder's cliffside castle to rescue Madeline. At the castle, Charles has begun to regret Madeline's transformation and begs Murder to return her to life, but Murder refuses. Charles discovers he has been tainted by Murder's voodoo and is also transforming into a zombie. As Neil enters the fortress, Murder senses his presence and silently orders Madeline to kill Neil. She approaches Neil with a knife, but Brunner grabs her hand from behind a curtain, making her drop the knife and walk away. Neil follows Madeline to an escarpment, where Murder commands his zombie guards to kill Neil. Brunner approaches Murder and knocks him out, breaking Murder's mental control over his zombies. Undirected, the zombies topple off the cliff. Murder awakens and eludes Neil and Brunner, but Charles pushes Murder off the cliff. Charles loses his balance and also falls to his death. Murder's death releases Madeline from her zombie trance, and she awakens to embrace Neil, end quote. Even just the plot summary from a movie filmed in 1932 feels a bit harrowing, doesn't it? But zombies are a horror trope that I think work on two separate levels. Number one, there is the religious level. On the religious level, the person and their soul are trapped in the body. This precludes someone from attaining the afterlife that they had earned in their corporeal form, which is terrifying for the person transformed into the zombie. This is a different type of horror than is commonly sort of associated with zombies today, though there is always that element in the zombie tale. Kill me because I don't want to be a zombie. I don't want to transform into that. I don't know how conscious they are. But today, in our modern storytelling form, oftentimes the zombie tale becomes a tale of survival. My generation knows this best through the survival horror genre video game Resident Evil, but it goes all the way back to the 1968 Night of the Living Dead, at least that far, as the plot of that movie was basically just what today's zombie horror genre is. People are coming back from the dead, digging themselves out of the grave, and all you can do is run because these zombies greatly outnumber you. And oftentimes, in these types of stories, the real bad guy is not the zombies. The zombies are just a mindless horde after all. The real bad guys are the other survivors. But what is the point of telling those stories? Well, in Danse Macabre, Stephen King's treatise on the horror genre, a text to which I believe I have referenced in every one of these episodes, Stephen King says, quote, "With its disguise of semantics carefully removed and laid aside, what those who criticize the tale of horror, or who simply feel uneasy about it and their liking for it, seem to be saying is this: you are selling death and disfigurement and monstrosity. You are trading upon hate and violence, morbidity and loathing. You are just another representative of those forces of chaos which endanger the world today. You are, in short, immoral." A critic asked George Romero following the release of Dawn of the Dead if he felt such a movie with its scenes of gore, cannibalism, and gaudy pop violence was a sign of a healthy society. Romero's reply, worthy of the Hitchcock anecdote related earlier, was to ask the critic if he felt the DC-10 engine mount assembly was a healthy thing for society. His response was dismissed as a quibble. You get the impression Romero likes this kind of sparring. I can almost hear the critic thinking. I've also made the claim several times in this series that it seems to me many of the aspects of literature which live on and live on and live on are inherent to the human experience, and that is why that happens. So for me, it is evidence of the fact that humanity, people, civilization, we are always worried about our own undoing. My favorite example of this is known as the Late Bronze Age collapse, a collapse of societies which happened somewhere between 1200 and 1150 BC. BCE, whatever it is that you are supposed to say these days. We will just say 1175 BCE for simplicity. What happened during this time? Well, we'll turn back to Wikipedia one more time. Quote, the palace economy of Mycenaean Greece, the Aegean region, and Anatolia that characterized the late Bronze Age disintegrated, transforming into the small, isolated village cultures of the Greek Dark Ages, which lasted from about 1100 to the beginning of the better-known Archaic Age around 750 BC. The Hittite Empire of Anatolia and the Levant collapsed, while states such as the Middle Assyrian Empire in Mesopotamia and the New Kingdom in Egypt survived but were weakened. Conversely, some cultures, such as the Phoenicians, enjoyed increased autonomy and power with the waning military presence of Egypt and Assyria in West Asia. Competing theories of the cause of late Bronze Age collapse have been proposed since the 19th century, with most involving the violent destruction of cities and towns, these including volcanic eruptions, droughts, disease, invasions by the Sea Peoples, or migrations of the Dorians, economic disruptions due to increased ironworking, and changes in military technology and methods that brought the decline of chariot warfare. Earthquakes had also been proposed as casual, but recent research suggests that earthquakes were not as impactful as previously believed. Following the collapse, gradual changes in metallurgic technology led to the subsequent Iron Ages across Eurasia and Africa during the first millennium BC. End quote. Societal collapse has been with us since societies existed. And as aware as human beings are of their own demise, I believe that too there is some collective consciousness among us that is aware of the demise of the times in which we live. Zombies and the zombie horde exemplify that perfectly. And so, in a world where we are obsessed with terms like late-stage capitalism, a world where there are no longer heroes to be had, a world where we are constantly promised that the luster of tomorrow has been lost, how would we not be obsessed with the idea of the undead, which is, ironically, at one time, both the idea of something that lives forever, as well as the end of the world as we know it. But I will argue this: heroes turn up when saving is needed. And if we cannot currently seem to find any heroes, maybe it's just not as dire as we believe it to be. That is all I have for this episode. If you enjoy or appreciate what I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button in order to stick around for more. Literature is the only thing that I talk about on this channel. There's poetry every Monday. I am currently in the midst of October, where I will be discussing Edgar Allan Poe, about 10 different pieces from him this month. There is also an Edgar Allan Poe playlist here on the channel. We are going through Holly by Stephen King, 2 chapters at a time as well right now. So if you're new around here, click around a little bit, and I hope to have you back for the next one.